The archive key on the table had a ceramic charm attached. A blue whale, 17 centimeters long, extinct for 2 centuries. Elena had traced its outline with her thumb while the council stripped her world of voice, then watched from the observation tier, his form held at standard density for the proceedings. The Zith did not sit. They suspended themselves in pressure columns, their bodies shifting between solid and vapor states depending on dignity required. Today he had chosen near solid, a professional courtesy to the gravity-bound humans below. The chamber smelled of ozone and recycled ambition, the particular sharpness of political air that made his outer edges blur despite his intentions. She had not argued when the presiding voice read the revocation. Earth trading rights suspended. Terran vessels restricted to inner corridors. The judgment came wrapped in language about unrefined practices and failure to integrate. Elena stood at the human delegation's small podium, her hands clasped behind her back, her posture suggesting she was waiting for a transport rather than the collapse of her species' economic future. Then had prepared his report for the Zith Concordance, noting human stoicism under pressure, a trait he had observed in 17 prior sessions. The thumb moved again. Small motion. The whale's ceramic tail rubbed clockwise 3 times. "Do you record this as acceptance?" His aide had whispered through the harmonic link, then had not answered. Something in the motion disturbed his analysis. Humans touched objects for comfort when distressed, he knew. But the key was not hers. It belonged to the Council's archive system, issued temporarily for the proceedings. Attaching personal ornamentation to institutional property suggested either profound disrespect or a category of attachment he could not map. Elena smiled as she placed the key on the table. The expression activated his threat assessment subroutines. Among Zith, facial tremor preceded form destabilization, the body announcing collapse before the mind surrendered. He had seen it in dissidents exposed to pressure trials, in elders whose harmonic signatures could no longer hold cohesion. He marked her file accordingly. Asterisk subject exhibits pre-fragmentation behavior. Recommend monitoring for breakdown. Asterisk. She walked out. No final statement. No request for appeal. The chamber doors sealed behind her with the soft hiss of pressure equalization, and then realized he had been holding his lower mass too rigid, a tension he had not registered until release. 6 days later, the jump gates began to close. Not malfunction. Closure. The phenomenon manifested first in the Corvid sector, where the primary gate simply stopped accepting coordinates. Vessels in transit emerged at emergency backup points, their navigation computers displaying identical errors. Asterisk Founders Protocol engaged. Authorization required. Asterisk then reviewed the technical reports in his quarters, his form expanded to reading density, and found the term repeated across 17 systems. Founders. 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 He requested Elena's file from the diplomatic registry. The response came delayed, flagged with a priority marker he had not seen since the Kith incursion. Asterisk access restricted. Founders clearance required. Asterisk. The ceramic whale. The thumb tracing its outline. The smile that was not distress but something else entirely. Something he had misread because his species measured emotional states by harmonic frequency and humans broadcast on wavelengths that required different receivers. Then extended a pseudopod to his communication array, his edges rippling with an agitation he could not stabilize. The Zith ambassador to the Terran delegation had not responded to hails in 14 hours. The council chamber, when he tuned to its public frequency, carried only the low static of emergency lighting and the occasional footfall of security moving through empty tiers. He had reported her smile as systemic failure. The council had budgeted no resources for human response because his analysis suggested imminent collapse. They had prepared for pleading, for negotiation, for the predictable architecture of defeated peoples seeking terms. Instead, they had received silence. 6 days of it. The most terrifying silence then had ever measured. The blood price materialized at the gate's event horizon without warning. Then watched the tactical feed in the Zith observation blister, his form compressed to minimum density for data processing. The Terran dreadnought was old, its hull scarred with radiation burns that suggested decades of hard service. Its magnetic clamps extended like mechanical fingers, gripping the gate structure with a gentleness that contradicted its weapon mounts. Then had expected aggression. He found instead a docking maneuver performed with the patience of a gardener staking tomatoes. Elena stood on the bridge, visible through the dreadnought's forward viewport. She held a glass of water, then watched her drink, the liquid moving through her throat in rhythmic swallows, and felt his harmonic signature stutter with dissonance. The council had been screaming for 6 days. Fleet commanders across 17 systems had issued ultimatums. And she was hydrating. She set the glass down, then expanded his sensory tendrils toward the transmission bands, expecting her to speak. She did not. She reached into her jacket pocket and withdrew the archive key. The ceramic whale caught the bridge lighting, its blue glaze reflecting against the dreadnought's scarred bulkheads. "Founder's protocol," she said. Her voice carried no elevation, no triumph, no anger. Section 12. The network builders retain administrative override regardless of subsequent territorial claims. Then felt his form destabilize. The Zith had used these gates for 400 years. The Council's authority rested on assumptions of infrastructure permanence. And she was citing maintenance clauses. "The Council revoked our trading rights," Elena continued. She rotated the key slowly, the whale's tail pointing toward the camera, then away. "They did not revoke our engineering privileges. The gate recognizes my biometric signature. The gate recognizes this key. The gate does not recognize your authority to exclude us from systems we designed." Den's aide transmitted harmonic distress patterns. The Zith ambassador had been found in his quarters, conscious but unresponsive, his form locked in a density loop that suggested profound cognitive dissonance. The council chamber itself had gone silent, not through any technical failure, but because no member could formulate a response to the geometry of their situation. The blood price hummed, then felt the vibration through the observation blister's hull, a low frequency that resonated in his fluid core. The sound was wrong. Gates did not hum. They opened or they closed or they waited in neutral states. This was something else. This was a system acknowledging its true administrator. Yuki was 19, an engineering apprentice on her first deployment. She sat at the secondary navigation station, her hands moving across holographic interfaces with the unconscious competence of someone who had trained since childhood. As the magnetic clamps locked into position, she began to hum. The melody was old, predating spaceflight, a song about sailors leaving harbor knowing they might not return. Her grandmother had taught it to her during a childhood spent on reclaimed coastal territories, where the Pacific's new acidity allowed no whales but memory remained. The song had no words then could translate. It spoke of tides and time, of patience measured in generations. Yuki's fingers continued their work while she sang, calibrating the clamp pressures, monitoring the gate's structural integrity, her body performing 2 rhythms simultaneously. Then recorded her file designation automatically. Apprentice Engineer Yuki Tanaka Okafor, 3rd generation spacer, specialty in legacy navigation systems. The council dissolved 3 hours later, not through vote or violence. Simply, no one could convene. The jump gates were closed. The sector's economy, built on assumptions of instantaneous travel, faced a reversion to sublight speeds that would take decades to navigate. The political entity that had existed for 4 centuries could not function without infrastructure it had never bothered to understand. Elena remained on the blood price, then watched her through long-range observation, noting that she still touched the ceramic whale when she thought herself unobserved. The gesture had not changed. His interpretation had. He requested a final meeting through diplomatic channels. The response came not from her, but from the gate itself. Founder's protocol active. Administrative review pending. Then withdrew to his quarters. He expanded his form to maximum volume, filling the chamber with his presence, and tried to process what he had witnessed. The smile he had read as prefragmentation tremor had been completion. The thumb tracing the whale had been activation sequence. The silence had not been absence of response but response itself, a language of infrastructure spoken by people who built systems that outlasted empires. The archive key sat on Elena's console throughout the negotiations that followed. It never opened a physical archive. The Zith learned later that the key's biometric chip contained no data storage, no files, no leverage for blackmail. The ceramic whale was merely ceramic. The power had been in the recognition, in the gate's memory of who built it, in the patience of a species that attached extinct giants to their instruments of state and waited for the universe to remember their scale. Then filed his final report. He described the revocation ceremony. He described the key. He described a smile he had misread because his species measured emotional states by harmonic frequency and humans broadcast on wavelengths that required different receivers. He did not describe what he felt when he watched Yuki hum her grandmother's song while locking down a sector. He had no harmonic category for it. The observation blister's windows showed empty space where the gate had been. The blood price remained, a single vessel maintaining position against the starfield. Then compressed his form to minimum density and waited for the administrative review to complete. The air in his quarters smelled of ozone and recycled time. He did not touch his communication array. He had learned that silence, properly deployed, was its own vocabulary. The ceramic whale would outlast him. The gate would outlast the council. The song would outlast the singer. These were not observations. These were structural facts, visible to anyone who knew how to measure duration instead of velocity.